What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the Gramercy Theater today, and today we are here with one of Brazil's finest. We are here with Angra. Thank you so much for your time, Felipe.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. Your latest record, which is Omni, it's came out this year. How was the making of it and everything been?
Well, we spent almost 1 year from start to finish. From the minute we started writing songs, and we took our time in the process to make sure that we had the best of what we could come up with, and we also tried to make it a very collective process. So we took our time and we tried to make the process as pleasant as possible. So we got together in nice places, in the woods or in the mountains, to try to capture, the true spirit of the band. Now the record's out. We are very pleased with the results, so everything's going great.
Excellent. In the forest and the mountains, it doesn't get more metal than that. I'm expecting a black metal sound in it.
Yeah, not so much, but it's just a place where we can get away from daily routine, get away from phones ringing all the time or daily chores even, You just get away and focus on the music and the writing process, and that pays off.
Yeah. Now that Angra has been around for a while and you already have a lot of albums out, at this point in your career, do you have like a template, or you go into the studio knowing how to make music, or has every record been a different experience?
It's both of each answer. Yes, it has a frame. It has a certain structure that we go for. We know how many fast songs, how many heavy songs, how many ethnic songs, how many ballads we want to have in general. But of course, every record is very different from one another because we experiment and we try to bring in new influences and new elements to each record. So in the end, although they have a similar structure, they sound different because we don't get attached to the sounds of the past, and we don't try to sound like we did before. We're always open for a new direction. So I guess the biggest challenge is to maintain the style and maintain the pillars that make Angra, while at the same time trying to incorporate new stuff and sound fresh.
Well, it's funny because, you take a death metal band for an example. Like, they kind of have a formula that they always stick with. People just want to hear the same sound. But I feel like a band like Angra thrives on experimentation, right?
Yes, and I think the minute you stop us from doing that, I think it makes no sense anymore, because as musicians, we are always learning and studying and looking for new music and new knowledge. And it's just fair that you put that knowledge to work on the new record and go further than you have before. I don't see why we would have a limit for experimentation, especially nowadays when being commercial has a totally different meaning than it had in the past. So we're not worried about radio songs. We're not worried about MTV. We're just worried about making music that speaks to us and to the people in a manner that is true and that allows us to be who we are.
Which is awesome. Do you think because you have all these different experiences, because, we always try to put labels on stuff as metalheads. I've heard people call you guys power metal, prog metal, thrash metal. Do you think that could allow you to tour with many different bands?
Yes and no. I think at the same time it broadens the spectrum, and at the same time it limits a little bit, because we're not strictly power metal or prog metal or whatever you want to call it. So sometimes it's hard to find a niche where to put the band. If we were strictly power metal, you would be with Halloween sort of areas, whatnot. If we were strictly prog metal, we would be a Dream Theater or Pennsylvania, whatnot. We're somewhere in the middle, which is good sometimes and not so good sometimes. For example, if you do a search for power metal on YouTube, we might not come up on the first results, even though we are one of the oldest bands in the genre. And same thing for the other styles that we embrace. But regardless of the label, we just try to be very, varied in what we do.
Yeah. Well, that prevents you guys, I would say, from being pigeonholed. And if you guys were strictly a thrash band, you would make a new record going, oh, it has to be thrash or it has to be this. So I'd imagine by not fully labeling yourselves, making new music is always easier that way, right?
Yeah, because you're just open for whatever comes. Of course, there is a certain limit and we are aware of what our crowd is, what our public is, and what they want in general, although even they don't agree among themselves. But we do have certain guidelines that we know how to follow.
Awesome. And by following those certain guidelines, though, are you ever afraid to like go outside those?
We're not afraid to go outside. We just know maybe enough not to go too much out of the box where it doesn't make sense with the rest of the record anymore. So we try to have, although a varied record, a concise one where you can listen from start to finish and feel that it's the same band. Once it starts sounding so different that you're in doubt if it's the same band or no, then I think it's too much. It has to have a spine that makes sense throughout the record.
Sure, sure. Now, kind of like a similar question I asked about the songwriting process. So, because as you mentioned, you are always thriving on trying new things and stuff. But is there something, by having like the spine, as you referred to, is there ever something that comes first in the songwriting process? Are you ever percussion driven? Is there like a concept that kind of determines the sound?
The songs can be born from many different sources of inspiration. Percussion is one of them. In fact, one or two songs in this record came from percussion ideas. Sometimes it's just a harmony and a melody that we develop into a full song. Sometimes it's a riff, sometimes it's an instrumental passage. And we, throughout the years, have been working on developing the writing process. So we really take advantage of the ideas that come up and turn them into songs that can work not only on the way they're recorded, but if you take just an acoustic guitar and sing the melody, the song works the same way. So we try to have that because it's a sign that the song will work in any format. So if one day we want to release an acoustic record, most of our songs would work in that format as well. So if this very early stage of the song works with the most rudimentary possible instrumentation, it will work when you add all the arrangements and whatnot.
Definitely. And one final question I'd like to ask before we end here today is coming from Brazil. I mean, I've always referred to Brazil as the Sweden of South America because with you guys and Sepultura and Crisian, I'm not going to name all of them because we'll be here all day. Was it easy? Because you guys started in 91, right? Yeah. Was it, so Arise by Sepultura was going crazy at the time and so much more. Was it kind of easy to start a band coming from São Paulo?
No, it's never easy. Although Angra is a little different because the band was created in the footsteps of what Viper did before. And Andre, the singer, was in Viper, and he already had the attention of a Japanese record label, which we still work with to this day, which is JVC.
Yeah.
And they were the first ones to really, we believe in this band and we're going to invest in it. And they made the first record possible practically by themselves. And then we opened up for Europe and only then for Brazil. So it was kind of, outside in process. But I think Sepultura definitely paved the way for Brazilian bands to play outside of Brazil. And if it weren't for them, maybe it wouldn't have been the same for us. But it's never easy when you're in South America. You're geographically distant, and the reality is so much different. So for a kid, especially back in the day, to have a nice instrument or to have access to information or classes or, just knowledge in general, it was so much harder than for, say, an American kid. So we had to go through a lot more to be able to do what we do, Of course, nowadays with the internet, everything is more and more connected and easier for everybody. But back in the day, it was not easy at all.
Yeah. I mean, Crisian is a Brazilian band now that's taking off like crazy, but I know that they're kind of newer. But I'd imagine it was much harder back in the day. And from, we interviewed Max Cavalera, and he said it was much harder to do it then than it was now.
Yeah, because we didn't have the studios, we didn't have the instruments, we didn't have the means to have quality material early on. So we just battled through, with what we had. And it's a wonder that a band like Sepultura, for example, if you watch the documentary and see how they started, it was very rudimentary, but they did it anyway because the talent and the originality was there. So I think that's what where we gain. You know, it's in our native talents, originality in the Brazilian elements, in our case in Sepultura, and that draw the attention of people outside Brazil
Yeah.
to what was going on there.
Definitely. And, you know, like you take, like, you know, a certain geographic location, like there usually is kind of dictated to one sound. New York, people think of hardcore. Sweden, they think of Gothenburg death metal. But it seems like Brazil is very diverse.
It is, even because Brazil is a continental country, it's so big, and so
Bigger than some planets.
yeah, yeah, and you could fit Europe inside of Brazil almost, you know. So of course, if you go to the north, the popular music is one kind. If you go to the south, it's completely different. The way people speak is very different, and that accent translates into the music as well. It also means that we have a lot of inspiration to draw from, you know. So we have the music from the northeast, the music from the north, the music from the center of the country, which is more country-like. You would compare it to your country music.
Yeah.
And the music from the south was totally different. So we have all these different flavors to add to our music, which is great.
Which is awesome. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, man.
Just, you know, you're doing this tour right now. Omni is your latest record. Just any tours or anything you'd like to promote that you're allowed to talk about, obviously, for the Omni cycle?
Well, we're finishing this tour with 32 days in total between U.S. and Canada. From here, we're moving to Asia and doing Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Then back to Brazil, and the year's over for a well-deserved rest. We are totaling 105 shows, I think, this year alone since March. So it's a heavy, heavy tour, which we are very happy with and very proud. So I hope to get you guys on the road and hope to see you at the shows.
Awesome. Well, Felipe, thank you so much. Everybody, we are here with Felipe of Angra. Pick up Omni if you haven't already. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.